TitleMatchNetwork.com.
So, also back in Texas, we're going to skip around a little bit in time, but you did manage Steve Austin for a little bit too, right? When he came in?
Yes, we did. Not when he came in, when he started there.
Right.
Chris Adams had a wrestling school. Like I said before, I was always involved in something. So Chris Adams had a wrestling school at the Sportatorium, and I was involved. I helped Chris teach how to teach interviews and whatever I could do to help out his wrestling school, and it was pretty successful because we were able to do advertising on the world-class show, so we had a lot of students.
And then like in the aftermaths too.
In the magazines and everything. It was very successful. And I was lucky to be able to be a part of that because I had a lot of fun, passing along that knowledge and teaching the interviews and stuff like that. But there was this one particular kid that just stood out. I mean, among them all. And that was Steve Williams. So I started managing him when he had his first match. So I was, Steve Williams, who eventually became Stone Cold Steve Austin. So I can't remember how long I was with him, several months, maybe close to a year, where his wife was his valet and I was his manager, and we had a feud with his ex-wife. It was just soap opera. That's wrestling, But I was with so many guys early on in their career that have gone on to become household names in our industry. Even today, the roster with the WWE today, Randy Orton and Batista and all those guys, they were coming up during the time that I was one of the talent scouts. And I was talking about earlier, I was going around the different territories. I was scouting all those guys during that time. And at home, I still have all the tapes, when they were first breaking in, all the reports that I wrote about all those guys. I don't know if I've ever do anything with any of them. But it's a lot of personal satisfaction here to know that, that I was there and a part of that. And now I can see him on TV. Yeah, I remember that kid.
How did Steve Austin change over time? Did he let his success go to his head at all? Or is he always...
I don't know. I mean, you have to change, under those circumstances, making the money that you make, becoming a millionaire and becoming a household name, you have to change somewhat. But Steve, when I see him, he's the same old Steve that I knew in Dallas, and I'm Percy, and he's the same old Steve. But to other people, they see a big change in him, but I don't. I like Steve a lot.
Speaking of Austin, his trainer, Chris Adams, are you surprised at what happened with him?
Yeah, as far as, I guess his roommate shot him, I guess.
You were in the car.
Yeah, I was in the car with his best friend.
That killed him.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago. He's the promoter of those shows.
He was telling us the story. It's just crazy. I'll tell you off the camera. It's nothing exciting, but it's a pretty crazy story.
I heard he was kind of like that. What was the deal? Was the deal with his wife with the prostitution? Did that happen when you were there, or you were?
I just heard about that.
Yeah, you were gone already. Right.
Once again, Chris kept me working. Like I said earlier,
right.
When World Class was down and shit, he was running his independent shows. That was
was that Big D or?
And,
who ran Big D?
I thought that was maybe Gary Hart.
Yeah, maybe.
Hell, I don't know.
It seemed like there was all these little groups.
Yeah, there was, and just like today, all these little groups everywhere.
Right.
I think immediately Michael Hayes pops in my head. Michael Hayes was always the shits, still the shits. He's one of the best friends I got in the business. I've known him forever. We were fans together now, and he's working for Vince. He's one of Vince's right-hand man. I just talked to him this afternoon. But he never was a wrestler. He was out there doing his strutting and stuff. I can remember we'd be going down the road. He'd have his long blonde hair, man, Percy, man, I got an idea. So, man, we're going to play Freebird. Me and Terry Gordy, we're going to wear the Confederate flags and shit. We're going to call ourselves the Freebirds. Yeah, Michael. Yeah, Michael. It was always, yeah, Michael. I just say, yeah, Michael, to keep him shut up. Because he just, yeah, Michael. Yeah, Michael. Yeah, Michael. I'll be damned. Who would ever thought? The Freebirds, one of the greatest tag teams, that revolutionized our sport next to the Von Erich family.
Were you ever, turned off at any time during your training, saying, "Oh, this business isn't for me"?
Nope.
Okay.
No, never did. It's just turned on.
They actually had you wearing a mask too early on, right?
Yeah. Well, back then, the enhancement talent, the job boys, and any chance I had a chance to get in the ring, of course, I took it. And they need somebody to do a job or a match guy. There's a lot of match guys back then, I went as Mr. X. I went as the Embalmer, believe it or not.
Yeah,
this is back in the 70s. The Embalmer, the Mortician. So I was the Undertaker before there was an Undertaker! Oh, yes.
What are your memories of International Championship Wrestling?
That's where I really got my first break. It was in Mississippi. It was run by a gentleman named George Culkin. He used to wrestle back years ago as George Curtis. There was the Curtis brothers, George Curtis and Don Curtis, and there was a couple other Curtis.
They were big in Tennessee, right?
The Curtis brothers. Well, it was kind of part of the Leroy McGirt, Bill Watts regime there, and this was 1978, and I don't know the reason or the business ends behind it, but they took Mississippi and kind of cut it off and gave it to George Culkin to run, and it was called International Championship Wrestling. And they ran the whole state of Mississippi, top to bottom. We had TV in every city. We worked 6 days a week, which was it was really my first real territory. And not only my first real territory, it was Michael Hayes' first territory. It was Terry Gordy's first territory. Kamala, Jim Harris, a dear friend of mine. I was his first manager in his first match in the business there. And Rip Rogers, if you've ever heard him, he's one of the trainers for OVW. I'm trying to think of some of the other guys that went through there. Troy the Hippie Graham. You remember? I don't know if you remember
Dream
him.
Machine.
Dream Machine. Boy, you just want it. Anyway, a lot of us came through there, and Frankie King, the Great Mephisto, was the booker there, and I cherish Frankie. We have a Gulf Coast reunion that comes up. We do every year. This year, 2006, will be our 15th reunion, and I always get to see all these guys. They all come. It's down in Mobile, Alabama. In the first weekend of March, and I get to see Frankie. And Frankie's one that named me Percy Pringle. It was kind of ironic there that they needed somebody to work one night, and a couple of friends of mine that worked the territory back then. The promoter for the Mobile territory, their name was Fields. Their working name was Fields. Their real name was Hatfield, and they're intertwined with the Fuller family, the Welch family. The Fields brothers' mother was Buddy Fuller's sister. So the families all entwined there. Well, anyway, long story short, Ricky Fields, who's the son of Lee Fields, who was a promoter there, and he had a partner named Terry Latham. And they helped train us and stuff. He called one day and said, "We need somebody over in Vicksburg, Mississippi tonight. You want to go?" "Hell yeah, I want to go." So I jumped in the car with him, went up, and I worked against Dr. X, who was Jim Osborne at that time, and he was one of the. He was Dr. Double X back in the day when Dick Beyer was the original Dr. X. Jim Osborne was Double X. Anyway, had a match with him in Vicksburg, and he said, "Well, can you come to Biloxi the following night?" Biloxi's just right down the road from my home in Mobile, 40 minutes away. So I did, and it was in the brand new Mississippi Coast Coliseum there. It was brand new; it just opened. So I had another. Right off the top of my head, I can't remember who I wrestled that night, but I wrestled somebody. But I remember coming back to the dressing room, and Frankie King, Mephisto, pulled me to the side and goes, "Bill, have you ever thought about being a manager?" And I kind of went, well, is he saying that I'm the shits? That I don't need to be a wrestler? Or is he complimenting me for saying that I should be a manager? And I never thought about being a manager. You want to be a wrestler, you want to be a wrestler. Managers kind of, never thought about me. He said, "Well, let's try it. We're going to call you Percy Pringle." I went, "Percy?" I didn't say nothing. I went, "Percy Pringle." So he sent me to the ring that night in the main event with two guys, two Samoan guys. Their name was Tapu and Tio. They're brothers, legit brothers. But back then they were going as the Mongolians. So I went to the ring that night with the Mongolians as Percy Pringle. And I've been Percy Pringle ever since. Except for a short little stint as some raccoon-faced embalmer. Oh, yes! I've been Percy Pringle, born a Percy, died a Percy, I guess. But
TitleMatchNetwork.com